public hearing is hereby called to order. We are joined online by Senator Amy Marcos. Manang, are you there? Who is the author of Senate Bill 1112 and will be joined later, was told, by Senator Dick Gordon, who is the author of Senate Bill 2265. Anyway, good morning again and welcome to the public hearing of the subcommittee of the Senate Committee on Public Services on Senate Bill number 2322, or an act providing for the administrative reform and reorganization of the Philippine Coast Guard, revising for the purpose Republic Act 9993, otherwise known as the Philippine Coast Guard Law of 2009, authored by Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III. We also take into consideration, as I mentioned, Senate Bill number 2265 for the institutionalization of the PCG, or Philippine Coast Guard Auxiliary, authored by Senator Richard Gordon, and Senate Bill number 1112, which aims to establish the PCG Academy, authored by Senator Amy Marcos. The Philippine Coast Guard traces its roots from the Bureau of Coast Guard and Transportation, created in 1901 during the American occupation. So mas patanda pa ito sa DND and the AFP. Kasi created ito by virtue of Commonwealth Act number 1 last December 21 of 1935, di ba? So mas patanda pa pala kayo sa AFP. In 1967, by virtue of RA 5173, the Philippine Coast Guard was created as a major unit under the Philippine Navy of the Armed Forces of the Philippines until March 30, 1998, when then President Fidel B. Ramos, in the exercise of his continuing authority under the Administrative Code to reorganize the Office of the President, issued EO 475, transferring the Philippine Coast Guard from the Department of National Defense to the Office of the President, and then 15 days thereafter to the then Department of Transportation and Communication, now known as DOTR, by virtue of EO 477. And finally, Congress enacted RA 9993, or the Philippine Coast Guard Law, which was signed into law on February 12, 2010. Yun ba yung foundation nyo? Foundation day ninyo? Okay. This public hearing is being conducted jointly with the Committee on Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation, as well as the Committee on National Defense and Security, Peace, Unification, and Reconciliation, Committee on Ways and Means, and the Committee on Finance. This representation has personally asked the chairman of the Committee on Public Services, Senator Grace Poe, to hear the aforementioned pending Senate bills because of the pressing gaps in the operational, administrative, and even organizational exigencies of the Philippine Coast Guard. These gaps come at the foreground of the growing tension in the disputed territories in the West Philippine Sea amid the continuing Chinese intrusions and harassments on our fishermen, and very recently the water cannoning incident against the two Philippine Navy commissioned supply vessels in the Ayungin Shoal, occupied by our gallant military personnel on board the BRP Sierra Madre, perpetrated by the Chinese Coast Guard. While we all point to the Philippine Coast Guard as the primary maritime agency of the government to strengthen our country's sensitive frontiers in the West Philippine Sea, we can no longer keep the predicaments of the agency at bay. There's also a need to discuss in this public hearing the apparent distortion in the salaries, allowances, benefits, and retirement of the PCG personnel brought about by its separation from the AFP and the subsequent enactment of RA 9993, as well as the system of ranks and pay or grade or rate relevant to the Philippine Coast Guard. So to this end, let us begin. Now I'd like to call on Senator Amy if he or if she has some opening remarks to make. Online na ba siya? Pero naka-mute. While waiting for Senator Amy Marcos to she has already logged in, but she's on mute.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Gordon is here.
Yes, Senator Gordon, please, if you have some opening remarks, kindly do so.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me that privilege. Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to do an impromptu remark because I love the fact that we should have a volunteer army of sorts, although, of course, the Coast Guard is a civilian force. It also needs a volunteer force, especially considering the prevailing situation in our country, where we have more than 7,600 islands, and we would need everything from coast watchers to volunteer floating craft that can, provide intelligence and assist during disasters, and especially because of the threat right now of more than 300,000 civilian boats by the Chinese that have already been incorporated into the People's Liberation Army Navy in the West Philippine Sea. With more reason, therefore, we need a force multiplier composed of Coast Guardsmen from our folks, including the banca boat fishermen who fly the seas, who can tell us of ship movements or boat movements, and at the same time, especially during rescue operations. We do this effectively in the Red Cross with units in the Red Cross as Commodore Lim, as Admiral Lim, who's a member of the Coast Guard as well. He knows that we're able to, use the volunteers of the Philippine Red Cross, and we're able to effect volunteers on the ground right away. For example, Admiral Lim told me before that there was a ship sinking that capsized about 2 months ago, and right away the Red Cross was there. The Coast Guard auxiliary can definitely prove worthy of that task, especially since many of the members, including myself, I'm a member, would really provide bottoms from pleasure craft to outboard motors to banca fishermen who can be incorporated in it and properly registered so that they can repel drug smugglers, which our chairman right now, acting chairman for this subcommittee, is very familiar with our thousands and thousands of fishermen who are incorporated with a modicum of training. At the very least, they will become our eyes and ears for smugglers of drugs, smugglers of banned items from firearms to cigarettes and stuff like that. And as you know, the Coast Guard in America was started because they were against smuggling and against counterfeiting. But in our case, we have our own threats, Mr. Chairman. And the Coast Guard, which is a civilian entity under the Department of Transportation, can certainly utilize the support of an active volunteer force composed of civilians, and that would also instill a high sense of duty, a love of country, and a sense of the common good, especially as the threat of a very, very rampant, rampaging Chinese force, and I say that guardedly, especially with the Taiwan situation and with the situation of our banca boats being rammed in our own oceans, this could immediately create a communication arm that would allow our slowly modernizing Coast Guard to be able to respond. You know, I remember one time, Mr. Chairman, when we looked for 3 fishermen out of Zambales who went out and they were being dragged in a boat to go to Scarborough Shoals. And somehow the rope snapped in high seas and they were dragged for about 17 days, 18 days at least when they called me, DCRH called me for assistance. And I called on the United States Navy at the time to look for them. And I said by that time they should be dead. And they said they had a single sideband on board that boat. And the U.S. Navy was able to triangulate. And horror of horrors, we had brand new boats from the Coast Guard. And this is not meant to marginalize our Coast Guard. We had some boats in Australia that came in through the courtesy of our minority floor leader. Apparently, it was not as well maintained as we wanted it to be. and they were on their way, and they conked out. And buti na lang, yung my mista in the class of 72 of the academy, later on, an admiral who became an ambassador, came to the rescue in a corvette. Later on, he will be head the Philippine Navy, and later on become I'm sure General Lacson, now Senator Lacson, a future president of the country, will know who he is. The Philippine Navy. I'm having a senior moment. He's a very good friend of mine, but I try to recall. But he was ambassador to Australia, and he was the one who rescued the fishermen, utilizing the corvette. But I think the Coast Guard should be able to utilize the resources of its Coast Guard auxiliary when it comes to this, so that our fishermen can be on the lookout. They can be equipped with radios that connect to an operations center of the Coast Guard auxiliary, and because of that, we would be having a more cogent response, a more speedy response towards our ability to be able to help people in distress. We have many ship sinkings. I have an adopted daughter that we rescued, the Philippine U.S. Navy rescued when it sank, their vessel sank, the MV Asuncion sank, of Oriental Mindoro from Palawan, and they were rescued. They were brought to Subic upon my request, and one of them, the survivors, became our ward, and she's now a graduate and living with us in Olongapo. So you see, Mr. Chairman, this is a super, organization waiting to happen to contribute to our great country, and there will be enough enthusiasm, more than enough enthusiasm to man this fleet. And all it needs, like the National Guard in America, which started as a militia and later on was federalized and used for state purposes, and even sent abroad to do battle. Here it will be completely civilianized, and certainly in time of war they can be absorbed, and it switches from the National Cabinet Committee of Transportation to the Department of Defense when they can be absorbed. And that is why this will require a regular appropriation, if you will, to at least, not much, but at least start headquarters and communication centers and allow for communications to be established on the archipelago and throughout the archipelago, and be able to be utilized for the aforesaid missions that they can utilize. It is my hope, Mr. Chairman, that we get your support, and I know that you are a visionary, and I think you will support this, and certainly I would be honored if I may be allowed to sponsor this with you when it comes to the floor, and I think we should do it as quickly as possible. Speed is the name of the game right now, especially so we can help the Philippine Navy and the Philippine Coast Guard perform its tasks. And I'm sure there's enough number of people in the Coast Guard auxiliary that we can invite with their pleasure craft, with their private boats, with the private fishing boats, that can be utilized for Coast Guard auxiliary. And certainly we can even utilize those with planes. Private planes can be utilized as Coast Guard auxiliary, so that we can react. Again, another experience that I cannot forget is when the Abu Sayyaf kidnapped all the way from Sulu, kidnapped the Dos Palmas guests, and they were able to get away with it. They were able to go back in that wide sea from Sulu all the way to Palawan and back to Sulu. And we could have had coast watchers in Cagayan de Sulu. We could have had private volunteers from aircraft among the Coast Guard auxiliary or boats that at least can track. I remember we didn't have ship to, or rather air to ship communications at that time, so we were uncoordinated. I think the Coast Guard auxiliary can help become auxiliaries to bridge that gap, Mr. Chairman. So again, I wholeheartedly, I'm happy that we could sponsor it with a little bit of tweaking. I think we can finally become a very active supporter, and not just a cog in the machine, but a very active auxiliary to fulfill its duties towards the Republic. Just as a little bit of humor, in the United States in 1903, if I'm not mistaken, there was the Dick Act, My name is Dick, as you know, and the Dick Act nationalized the National Guard and defined its purposes as both federal and state. And that's the first time they started appropriating money actively as a National Guard unit. And eventually, as you know, the National Guard is now utilized even for foreign duty in Afghanistan and in Iraq. But that is not the way we're envisioning this, of course, in wartime, as in World War II. Many of our young people volunteered in Bataan. And if you have something like this, you can have utilize our volunteers to perform the duties. I have not seen, Your Honor, and I would like to take a look at the Philippine Coast Guard law. I would certainly support the improvement of it because, as you probably know, we sponsored this in my previous stint in the first Congress that I attended, which is, I think, the 13th and 14th Congress. And having said that, Mr. President, I did that, Mr. Chairman, I did that with then Senator Biazon, who was then Committee on National Defense. And we both sponsored it. And I think now we can sponsor this law, and I hope we can finish it before the end of our Congress this time. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me the preliminary remarks. I can speak a lot more, but I think you see a very enthusiastic supporter here, and I'm sure many of our colleagues will want to be part and parcel of this. Finally, I remember one time when I was given a medal by the Philippine Coast Guard in connection with that rescue, and I think I have some pictures of that in connection with the rescue made by the Coast Guard and the Philippine Navy at that time. I went to the Congress and was tweeted by the late Joker Arroyo, who is a very dear friend of mine, fellow senator, that I was in uniform, and I proudly said, this is the uniform of the subsidiary of the Coast Guard, and it's not a Mickey Mouse organization, as you can see, and we have been using the Coast Guard auxiliary, for example, as volunteer blood donors, rescuers, and certainly they will not be lacking in terms of support for the different missions that our country can provide them. So doing, I hope that the committee will act favorably and be able to try and pass this within the lifetime of this current Congress. Thank you very much, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, for the privilege. Magandang
Thank you,
umaga po.
Senator Dick. My kapatid in profession in advocacy. Yeah, I remember that incident, My,
That's
when
funny.
the ever naughty, the late Joker Arroyo teased you when you arrived in the session hall in full Coast Guard uniform. So, but that was done in jest, as a brotherly, the usual Joker Arroyo that we knew. Anyway,
Yes.
we're also joined in this hearing by Coast Guard Commandant, Vice Admiral Leopoldo, Vice Admiral Leopoldo Laroya. Sorry.
Yes.
And they have come in full force. They're all here, physically present. He's joined by the Deputy Commandant for Administration. You're also a Vice Admiral or Rear? No, I mean, si Endona, you're also Vice Admiral.
Yes, sir.
So there are
Mr. Chair.
two Vice Admirals?
The commandant is Admiral po, sir.
Admiral right
Yes.
now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
A 4-star.
So Leopoldo Laroya is already a full admiral,
4-star, sir. Yes, sir.
4-star. So Vice Admiral Oscar Endona Jr., you're the Deputy Commandant for Administration.
Yes,
Of course, we're also joined by Mr. Felipe Roya III, the Senior Budget and Management Specialist representing the DBM. Wonder if he's already logged in. Also, the DOJ represented by Attorney Alden Reuben B. Luna, State Counsel.
Good morning po.
Good morning, Attorney. Also, Maritime Group, Police Brigadier General Harold Tucson. I saw you earlier.
Good morning, sir.
Also, representing Vice Admiral Retired Robert Empedrad, the Administration of Marina, Mr. Maximo Banyares Jr., Director, Legal Service.
Good morning, Your Honors.
I also see Attorney Marvin Masangkay from the Philippine Coast Guard Auxiliary, and also
Good morning.
Vice
morning, Your Honor.
Admiral Beethoven Ensur, former National Director, PCGA, Rear Admiral George Slim. Good morning, sir. Deputy National Director for Administration, and then Commodore Jose Marie P. de la Peña, Chief of Staff. Morning, sirs. Also, Captain Isidro B. Butaslak Jr., Deputy Support Group Director for MARSAF. Also in full force, yung auxiliary. We are also joined virtually by Mr. Chucky Lee de la Cruz, Chief of Staff to the Superintendent of the Philippine Merchant Marine Academy.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Your Honors.
Yeah, good morning. Meron ba ako na-miss? Anyway, later on, you'll be properly acknowledged. Your presence will be properly acknowledged as you present yourself. So, do we have an opening statement from the Deputy Commandant for Administration before we start the question and answer?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
If
Senator
I-
Gordon, please.
Yes, I'd like to make my reservation to help sponsor. If we're going to pass the Philippine Coast Guard, I'd like to be actively participating so that we can have a much more improved and more intensified Coast Guard. So there are two bills actually that I think, with your permission, I'd like to offer my help, if I may. We've sponsored, as you know, the new bill on the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces, which I think is very visionary, and I'm happy to be again part and parcel of our pair. Magkapatid tayo dyan. We're gonna do this again if you'll grant me that request. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. It will be a privilege and honor to have you as a co-sponsor, and I will manifest it at the proper time in plenary. Senator Dick. Go ahead, Vice Admiral Oscar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Allow me, sir, to read our position paper or opening statement. The Philippine Coast Guard is a relatively new agency as it was transferred only in 1998 from the Philippine Navy, though we are created in 1901. We actually came from the Navy. And as a unit under it to the Department of Transportation as an attached agency. This transfer was promised to not affect the PCG's character to its personnel, especially the benefits thereof. In 2010, the Congress issued the Republic Act 9993, the law establishing the PCG as an attached agency of the Department of Transport. However, in 2017, the Department of Budget and Management wrote the PCG informing that per provisions of RA 9993, the senior enlisted personnel with ranks of Chief Petty Officer and higher will no longer have their pension computation be based on the rank of ensign. Instead, will just strictly follow the one rank higher system as used by the AFP. Then followed the notice from DBM in 2018 that the PCG retirees are not entitled to indexation. With these and other gaps that existed in RA 9993, it has been resolved that the best solution is to seek congressional assistance through amendment or revision. For this reason, Mr. Chair, the PCG started in 2018 to draft a proposal for both chambers of Congress for the amendment of the RA 9993. In the meantime, there has been efforts for the establishment of Coast Guard Academy that has been in the development plans of the PCG for some years now. And the Academy seeks to establish a tertiary education institution that will train interested youths on the functions of the Philippine Coast Guard and the specific skills required to be Coast Guardians. As for the institutionalization of the PCG auxiliary, the PCG is of the view that this can be supported. However, the PCG, as a volunteer organization under the management and control of the Philippine Coast Guard, is already properly established through Section 11 of RA 9993. The PCGA is an organization of volunteers who have the capacity to augment the Philippine Coast Guard through manpower or assets during search and rescue and coastal cleanups. The members of the Philippine Coast Guard Auxiliary undergo orientation and may undergo rescue, swimming, and diving trainings to learn skills necessary in performing rescue and for oil spill containment and cleanups. They are not armed and they are not authorized to perform law enforcement functions. We acknowledge the support and help of the PCGA as we treat them as actually as our secret weapon. And in our proposed bill, the PCGA is mentioned. The Philippine Coast Guard plan to continue to maintain the existence of the Philippine Coast Guard Auxiliary, despite we are also asking for the creation of the Coast Guard Reservists. PCJ is different from the AFP reservists, sir, because they are volunteers and they are not receiving any salary. We believe that the efficiency of any government agency is affected by its organizational structure, administration, and manpower strength, matters that the PCG seeks to strengthen and upgrade through the passage of the proposed amendment bill or the Senate Bill number 2322. The maritime jurisdiction of the Philippines is vast and rich, and it is the hope and source of provision for the Filipinos. In conclusion, Mr. Chair, the PCG is respectfully requesting and imploring the Senate to help the PCG in passing the amendment bill into law at the soonest possible time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Admiral Andona. Yeah, being the chair, I'll just play the role of a scavenger. Ano?
Yes, sir.
Sa military parlance, mapping up operations. So I'll give the floor to the other members in this particular case, Senator Gordon, to ask the questions if you have questions to ask the Coast Guard and the other resource persons present physically or virtually. Yes, Senator Dick, you can have the floor. You can take the first shot.
I want to know if the good admiral is amenable to supporting the PCGA as an auxiliary to strengthen it
Ba't nakalagay dun?
so that we can actually have a more robust volunteer effort. They would have to have a program of training as well as maybe prepare some appropriation so that they can be sustainable. I think that's important because they have units in the different parts of the archipelago. What is the position of the good Admiral Odona insofar as Andona on the creation of the PCJ auxiliary, so that it will have a self-executing identity or character. Thank you.
Yes, kindly respond to the.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the PCG fully supports to strengthen the Philippine Coast Guard auxiliary. But we also included in our revision of the PCG law the creation of the Coast Guard Reservist Force, which is different from the auxiliary, because the PCJ auxiliary are actually volunteers and they are not receiving anything from the government. We are actually the one receiving from them in terms of supports and donation, as well as utilization of their assets like airplanes and vessels. So that's why we call them our secret weapon.
Yes.
But to compare the auxiliary to the, as mentioned earlier, the Maritime Militia of China, definitely they are also, the Maritime Militia are receiving salary from the PLA or the People's Liberation Army. So it's very different po, sir. But we will fully support if we will strengthen in terms of equipment, like communication equipment, so that our auxiliary or the coastal auxiliaries can be issued radios and they can easily communicate with our Coast Guard stations and substations, if they can hear or they can see any unusual presence of any, let's say, maritime violations at sea. We will fully support that, sir, in terms of equipment.
Thank you. I think that the Coast Guard auxiliary can volunteer their equipment, their boats, their planes. They can probably have radios, and all they need would be the imprimatur of the Philippine Coast Guard commandant, as well as the rank and file. When you mentioned the reservists, in the proposed bill, you can get from the auxiliary some people who might volunteer and eventually become members of the reserve unit while remaining still in the Coast Guard auxiliary. But at the same time, they can volunteer, let's say, for limited periods of time. Of course, when you look at the history of the National Guard in America, they started out as Minutemen, or the volunteers in the Revolution of America, when the different colonial settlements provided their own militia to protect the settlements from, and they were not allowed to be used for as posse comitatus, or they were just there to provide support when they're called upon. As you know, we can all be asked to the citizen of the country can be asked to render civilian and military service in time of war or national emergency. The auxiliary can provide the manpower for voluntary service, which I think one of the purest things that a citizen can do is to render voluntary service, and that can be enhanced, and he can graduate into the reservists or even be absorbed by the Philippine Coast Guard eventually if he chooses to have a career. Of course, the auxiliary will not be paid, and you're correct. But certainly, in terms of donations, they can provide donations for themselves, raise money so that they can be able to have their own capacities. And of course, sometimes they can. We can even insert. We have to have the allow them to have tax-free donations that can be utilized by the auxiliary. So long as it is being used for the auxiliary, then they can utilize that. It cannot be used for private purposes, of course. So those are the things that I would like to suggest, and I think there's no debate on that. Thank you. By the way, isn't it correct, sir, that the militia of China, I mean, they masquerade as fishing boats, but they're actually cashiered into into the navy of or the Coast Guard of the Chinese. I don't think they're paid, but not really. It's definitely a force multiplier. In fact, would I be correct if I said that in case of a conflict, these guys can be kamikaze boats that can block the passage of aircraft carriers, even ram boats of other countries, or for that matter, ram fishing boats of the Philippines, as they have done. And he cannot just be, idly watching and being spectators while they do it. I think if we had instantaneous communication that is allowed as part of the Coast Guard auxiliary, I don't know if you agree with my vision that all fishing boats of our country can volunteer as Coast Guard auxiliaries, so that we have a net of volunteers all over the country that can connect to the operation center of the Coast Guard auxiliary, or even direct to the Coast Guard, Philippine Coast Guard, so that we can do quicker action when we react to such incidents at sea. Would that be possible, Admiral?
Yes, sir. It is possible, sir, Mr. Chair. And I have read some articles that the maritime militia are even trained on mine laying. And as well as their boats are designed for ramming. So
Yeah.
we will welcome, sir, that if our, especially the fishing fleet of the Philippine commercial fishing fleet, can join the auxiliary and will be our eyes and ears. If we can put that into our network of communication, that will be a big help in our collection of information of what's happening at the West Philippine Sea.
In
Thank you,
fact,
Mr.
even
Chair.
the lowly fisherman can become a member, right?
Yes, sir, for coastal monitoring po, sir.
Coastal watchers, no, like the Australians, no.
Yes,
In
sir.
World War II, they had coast watchers in our islands. By the way, my father served in the Philippine military as a guerrilla, as a coast watcher, watching the movements of the Japanese in the Zambales area in San Antonio, Zambales, where we have the Merchant Marine Academy of the Philippines right now. I think that's something that I think well worth considering. Anyway, it will have to be fine-tuned as we go along. I don't see it as I don't see it weaponized though. I just see it as eyes and ears and rescue units, but not as a weapon. Uh, Although I've seen yachts, I think they're they're given private firearm licenses, and they carry their firearms to prevent them from being boarded by pirates. I think that's allowed under the principle of self-defense, no? But I don't think we should recognize that as an active force of the Philippine military or the Coast Guard, but really just as a self-defense. But the idea is to just communication and rescue, among other things, quick response to disasters at sea, including fishermen that are quite poor. I can name you any number of circumstances, even in the Manila Bay area, when boats are lost at sea and private yachts or private boats came to the rescue. But I think that is basically the vision that we're looking at. Would that be agreeable to the good admiral?
We share your vision po, sir. We will fully support. Actually, if you can observe po, sir, the secretary, our secretary of the transport is actively conducting activation of the different coastal security auxiliaries. So every time he moves around the country, see to it that we organize those coastal fishermen, the lowly fishermen, to be a member of the coastal security auxiliary. We will continue po that, sir, and we, as much as possible, we want to get more volunteer fishermen to be our eyes and ears. No? If we can issue them radio so that they can report immediately anytime they can see violations or any monitoring activity that they can see at sea. No?
Yes.
We will welcome po that, sir.
Thank you. I think precisely we can include the I would call them lowly, but certainly a humble fisherman, even without a radio, can we train for a semaphore or flash messages by flashlight if you like, because sometimes they go at sea and they can immediately call for assistance from their fellow individual fishermen at sea so that they can be assisted. If they're a member of the Coast Guard Auxiliary, signaling at sea can be taught as a lesson, as a part of their syllabus. And certainly the Philippine Coast Guard. By the way, I just want to congratulate. I've always admired the Philippine Coast Guard. It's a very highly disciplined force and very quick and certainly, I've even asked the Philippine Coast Guard, and I can ask them because they're not military, to man our amphibians in the Red Cross when we're rescuing during flood situations. That would be certainly most welcome for the Coast Guard Auxiliary to know as well. Thank you.
Yes, if I may interject, Senator Dick, and I'd like to address this question to Vice Admiral Bithoven Sur or any of the members of the Coast Guard Auxiliary present. In terms of personnel and equipage, and equipment, of course, how strong is the Philippine Coast Guard Auxiliary? Right now, we have the regular Coast Guard at 22,000 plus,
We'll be reaching 23,000 by the end of the
23,000.
year po, sir.
So how strong in terms of personnel and equipage is the Philippine Coast Guard Auxiliary? Anybody can respond?
Senator, may I? Yes, sir. The Philippine Coast Guard Auxiliary has different, scattered nationwide to the different districts. And we are fully organized. And as mentioned, yes, we have a good number. And from our own resources, we try to train our people. And that's why we are requesting for a better opportunity to train ourselves with the support of the national government by institutionalizing the Philippine Coast Guard Auxiliary. And with your support, sir, Mr. Chair, and of course, our dear Senator Gordon, who is a Vice Admiral in the PCGA, we will be able to strengthen our organization all over the country. And we will be there fully supportive of whatever we can do to assist the Philippine Coast Guard, which is our main function as an organization. Thank you, sir.
Yes, as we speak, what's your full personnel complement? All over the
So,
country.
sir, Admiral George, would you like to give a better, an updated number of what we have now? During my time, we have about 20,000. I do not know now, Admiral George Lim.
Mr. Chair, if I may answer.
Yes.
Based on our database, we have about 21,000 strong auxiliary members.
How many vessels do they have?
I do
Because
not
you
have
mentioned earlier that they would lend.
only
the
the
vessels.
members of the executive squadron have the
So how many vessels
vessel.
can they share with the Philippine Coast Guard? Of
Uh,
course,
right,
in times of calamities and other.
I will get the
issues.
number po, sir. I will get that,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
You don't have the number right
Yes, sir.
now. Yes, Senator Dick.
In fact, they're being given license numbers as in recognition that, for example, a boat belonging to a well-heeled businessman can be cashiered or can volunteer its boat in rescue missions, and they would usually have a number. Correct me if I'm wrong, Admiral Lim. No, if you have a boat and you're part of the auxiliary, you will have a PCGA number. Maybe the commandant of the Coast Guard can answer that. I don't know if that exists still. But certainly, if we make this a formality of creating the PCGA, I'm sure now there will be a proper count. A lot more people will come in and enthuse them and become enthusiastic volunteers, including the poor people who will be part and parcel of the auxiliary in the regions. That they can train with the Philippine Coast Guard and the Philippine Coast Guard Auxiliary and come out with very elementary rules of training and communication that will eventually benefit us in terms of having an early warning system. So by the time when we do this bill and we make it into a law, it will be easier to generate volunteers. It will be easy to show the vision of the auxiliary the way we're talking about it in this bill. It's been there for a long time, but because it's been regarded lightly because I don't want to wear a uniform that's really, I don't think it's Mickey Mouse. I think it's a way everybody wants to wear a uniform so we can serve this country in a volunteer capacity. But when you have this formally recognized, I think there will be more, status of actual, not a status symbol, but status as a rescue worker, as a volunteer watcher, if you will. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes. With the permission of Senator Gordon and the other members of the auxiliary, we can now segue a bit to discuss Senate Bill 2232, author 2322, no, authored by Senator Pimentel. And I'd like to ask Vice Admiral Endona. Alam niyo yung RA 9993 was only enacted, as a matter of fact, signed into law in 2010. Ano? For a law 12 years is still a maturing stage, di ba?
Yes,
So
sir.
what are the factors that impel the PCG to seek the amendment or revisit of RA 9993?
Initially po, sir, when the RA 9993 was approved, the PCG strength is not more than 7,000. And for the last 5 years, we tripled in number. So we are now 21,000 and we'll be hitting 23,000 by the end of the year with the continuous recruitment that we are conducting. And problems are arising right now, especially in terms of facilities and establishment of the academy or to be our source of Coast Guard. But the initial problem that we encountered actually are those who came from our personnel who retired, who came with us. They came from the Navy in 1998. They joined us, and we separate from the Navy. When their counterparts retired from the AFP, a chief petty officer will be automatically receive a pension with that of a pension for the ensign or automatic promotion po, sir. While in our case, the DBM made the interpretation that our chief petty officer, when they retire, will not be promoted to ensign or receive a pension equivalent to that of an ensign grade. So that becomes our problem po, sir, because there's a difference or a discrepancy of about 6,000 pesos for the same personnel who are trained by the armed forces, and the one of them joined the Coast Guard and retired in the Coast Guard, compared to his batchmate who retired from the AFP, there's a difference of about 6,000 to 8,000 pesos in pension. That's why we're seeking to clarify this.
Yeah, in the matter of personal strength, does RA 9993 impose a limit? Or at least, maski yung sa IRR, does it impose a limit on the personal strength of the Philippine Coast Guard?
It does not.
It does not, di ba?
Yes, sir.
So why do we need to amend the 9993? If, as you mentioned, one of the reasons is the
Interpretation.
yeah, I mean the small number of personnel. You started with 7,000.
Yes, sir.
And that's the reason why you want to revisit RA 9993 kasi gusto nyong i-up yung ceiling,
Yes, sir.
yung troop ceiling ninyo. But since RA 9993 does not impose a limit on the number of personnel, so why the need to amend 9993? Kindly explain.
Rear Admiral Koeme, our former HR, may explain, sir.
Thank you, Vice Admiral Andona, sir. Mr. Chair, sir, I'm the former Chief of Personnel of the Coast Guard and the Head of Human Resource Management of the Coast Guard. And I happened during the time engaged with the DBM, specifically on the interpretation of the new Coast Guard law on the provision of the retirement law in relations with the retirement system of the AFP. During that time, during our conversation, sir, is that their interpretation that we can no longer avail the AP retirement law, it is because of there is already specific provisions in the PCG's law. So with this, sir, they strictly invoke the interpretation that the Coast Guard, in connection with its IRR, there is already a specific and defined rank distribution from the lowest rank of apprentice man to the Master Chief. In the AFP, when those Navy personnel join the Coast Guard, when they retire, they can avail of one rank higher, which is ensign, or the equivalent of one rank higher for purposes of pension benefits. But with these provisions, as interpreted by DBM, they interpreted it as one rank higher, meaning to say if you retire CPO, we will just avail the pension benefits of senior chief petty officer, no longer the pension benefits of an ensign or lieutenant JG, just like the AP. So with this discrepancy, sir, those Navy personnel joined the Coast Guard were then so demoralized when they were greatly affected of this interpretation. So the Coast Guard then has no other options but to seek for congressional interventions in order to cure these gaps as affected by this interpretation by
In
DDBS.
other words, troop ceiling is not a compelling reason in
Definitely, sir.
seeking to amend 9993. It's more on the benefits, particularly sa retirement.
One of the major factors, sir, is the
So
retirement
what are the
benefits
other
of people,
factors
sir.
aside from retirement benefits, to be at par with the your counterparts sa AFP and the PNP as well, ano? So napag-iwanan talaga kayo doon. But what other factors?
One other factor, sir, it is because under Section 7 and Section 8, we have this rank distribution by rank for the officers to maintain its pyramidal structure. At the same time, the ratio then was 1 officer is to 7 enlisted personnel. So at the same time, when we were then proposing our maximum strength then is 1 Coast Guard personnel per coastal kilometer. So we are just pegged to
Two Coast Guard.
One-
What
one
is
Coast
required under this proposed measure is two
one
Coast
Coast
Guard
Guard.
personnel per 1 kilometer of coastline.
Previously, it's
Before-
before, sir, it's 1 Coast Guard personnel per
One is to
1 kilometer. 1:1, sir.
Yun sa 9993.
9993, sir.
Now you want to, you are proposing that you increase the number of personnel equivalent to 2 personnel
To 1
per
kilometer.
1 kilometer.
Yes,
So what is the total length of our coastline in the Philippines?
I believe our exact length is around 37,000.
36,289.
More than 36,000, sir.
Yeah, 36,289.
Yes, sir.
So kung ang hiningi ninyo is 2 Coast Guard personnel per kilometer of coastline, so you'd be needing 75,000
Yes, sir.
personnel. Now my question is, comparing it to the AFP and the PNP, ang total strength ng PNP, I think they're 220,000. The AFP is pretty much the same. So yung strength ninyo is, naka-equate ito doon sa coastline, sa length ng coastline. Whereas doon sa AFP, I think it's more mission-oriented, di ba? Yung risk, the national security factors involved, or risk involved. Sa PNP, ganun din. So, now, kaya kanina akala ko Vice Admiral yung commandant because ini-equate ko to do sa strength ng Coast Guard because it's a lean organization with only 22,000 plus as of this moment. So, yeah, yun ang hindi ko ma-reconcile. And under this proposal, in time of war, ma-attach kayo sa DND. Di ba?
Yes, sir.
Under the proposed measure.
Yes.
So you are a civilian entity on your own under the DOTR, but in case of a declaration of war, of course, we renounce war, but if need be, kung we are forced to engage another country in war, you will be an attached agency of the DND. Now I have an issue. I have a concern. It is called the principle of the unity of command. The Philippine Navy, being a major service of the AFP, is only carrying a 3-star rank, Vice Admiral. Now, the Chief of Staff is the equivalent of the Commandant of the Philippine Coast Guard. Now, paano ngayon ititreat ng Secretary of National Defense in the remote possibility that the country goes into war with any foreign country? How do we solve the issue of observing the principle of unity of command, which is very important in any organization, di ba? Kindly address that issue.
Initially, sir, the Coast Guard is not instrument of war. Our vessels are actually, our armaments is limited to, I think the biggest arms that we have is a caliber 50 machine gun. So more or less, in times of war, sir, the Coast Guard can be utilized for rescue mission, but not really on in the front line for war fighting. But on the issue of the unity of command, that's correct, sir. Your observation, Mr. Chair, is correct.
So the commandant of the Philippine Coast Guard is willing to
will
take
be
orders
under
from
the Navy. Will be under the
the
Navy.
FOIC, the flag officer in command of the Philippine Navy. That would be an awkward situation because carrying a
the-
4-star rank, which is equivalent to the rank of the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces, if you take orders from a lower ranking officer of the Armed Forces, who is the flag officer in command of the Philippine Navy, who carries a Vice Admiral
Yes,
rank,
yes, sir.
it would be awkward, di ba? May we hear from Commander George Manalo? You are representing the... Ba't ang baba naman ng representative ng Philippine Navy rito? Commander George Manalo, can you share your thoughts on this matter? On this issue at hand? Anybody from the Philippine Navy, for that matter?
Sir, Captain Cortesano, sir,
Yes, Captain
Captain
Cortesiano. Yeah, you are the Philippine Navy. Go ahead,
from the
proceed.
Naval
Go ahead.
Reserves. Yes, sir. Sir, on the perspective, if I may, sir, on the perspective of the Philippine Navy, sir, indeed, sir, it is more logical, sir, that the rank of the that will be attached as per RA 7077 when there will be a in times of war, definitely, sir, the higher rank must be more appropriate than the one who giving orders, rather than the one that will be giving orders. The subordinate will be higher rank than the one who is giving it, sir. It is more appropriate, sir, that we have to distinguish the most appropriate rank to the auxiliary that will be attached to the AFP or the TND itself during in times of war when it will be utilized. That's our perspective, sir.
In other words, the Philippine Navy is willing to be subsumed.
And
It's now the
if I may,
FOIC,
sir,
the
I think,
the
sir,
flag officer in command of the Philippine Navy that will take orders from the commandant of the Philippine Coast Guard.
if I may, I think, sir, the other way around, sir, because at that time, sir, if it will be mobilized, therefore, sir, that the authority now will be from the pillar, not from the auxiliary, sir. That's why, sir, our position, sir, is that we have to rectify the rank per se, because it really matters on the moral and the on the position, on the merits of the hierarchy on the organization, sir. Thank you, sir.
No, Captain Cortesiano, we're not talking here of the PCG auxiliary.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Indeed, sir.
Naka-speaker ka?
No, sir.
Nag-e-echo eh. Nag-e-echo.
Sorry, sir.
Yes. Ayan, ngayon. No, my question is,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair.
how can we solve that awkward situation now that, the Philippine Coast Guard used to be a major unit under the Philippine Navy. Now, the tide has changed. We're talking here of war condition, that the Philippine Coast Guard now will take over and at its disposal, mobilize the entire Philippine Navy. Are you amenable to that kind of a situation? In times of war, of course.
Yes, sir. If I may, sir, I think, sir, as provided, sir, in my position, sir, we are not amenable to that, sir, because as provided by the law, sir, they have to subscribe. They will be attached under RA 777, sir. They will be attached to the Department of National Defense, particularly the AFP, as per provided by the existing laws right now, sir. That's why I'm just recommending that we have to rectify if the Coast Guard auxiliary that will be attached to the AFP we have the rank of 4-star general, and that will be directed by the 3-star general under the regular force, I think there will be a problem on that, sir.
That is correct. So what do you suggest? I-defrock natin yung commandant ng Philippine Coast Guard. Babawasan muna natin 1-star in times of war. And then he will just regain his 4-star rank after the war. Eh, alam mo tong gera, pagka nagkaroon ng World War III, wala na tayong wala tayong kinabukasan dito. Anyway, no, levity aside, that could be a remedy. Yes, may we hear from the Philippine Coast Guard?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we believe that the Coast Guard in times of war will be attached to the DND. So we'll be getting orders from the Secretary of National
Yes,
Defense.
but you will pass on the problem to the Secretary of National Defense because he will be the one directing each and every unit.
Yes.
or
All
each and every service,
operational.
no?
Personnel.
So, which will be the Office of Primary Responsibility, the Philippine Navy or the Philippine Coast Guard? So, one solution is i-defrock natin yung Commandant of Philippine Coast Guard, ibalik muna natin sa 3-star rank while we are at war with any country. We have to resolve this because these are the questions that I will be addressing,
Yes,
I will
sir.
be confronted with when Senator Gordon and I will defend it on the floor. Ano? Kaya it is important that we resolve this issue. Alam mo, yung mga kasama namin doon, alam ni Senator Digito, maraming pilosopo siya. So we need really to resolve this issue once and for all during the committee hearing so we can be prepared to defend it on the floor at the proper
If
time.
I may recommend, Mr. Chair, the Coast Guard Commandant will get command from the AFP Chief of Staff because they have the same rank, and it's good.
Yeah,
that
but
they're-
when the Chief of Staff dishes out the orders, may problema pa rin because who will take primary responsibility over whom? And ang reality sa ground, mas upgraded yung military capability ng Philippine Navy than the Philippine Coast Guard. Di ba? So, that's why I asked Captain Cortisano, willing ba yung POEC ng Philippine Army to take orders from a 4-star rank general who is the commandant of the Coast Guard, but with less military capability and less, personnel, wala sigurong problema because lean din yung Philippine Navy. I'm not familiar with the strength of the Philippine Navy right now. Pero that would create a problem. Again, we'll go back to the principle. Pinag-aralan natin to lahat eh. The principle of the unity of command. That's very important. Otherwise, there'll be conflict. Pag hindi na-observe itong principle of unity of command.
unless
So we have to crack our heads on how to address this kind of a situation.
unless they're classmates, sir.
Never mind if they're classmates. Even between classmates and between upperclassmen and underclassmen,
Yes,
there
sir.
are dynamics, di ba?
Yes, sir.
Sige. Are you willing to offer a solution now or you want to go back to the drawing board? Sige, go ahead,
With
Admiral.
permission from Vice Admiral Andona, sir. Actually, sir, if you try to look at it, sir, how we were transferred in 1998, ang placement po ng Coast Guard is one of the major units of the AP, which is the Coast Guard under the Navy. So the reason for being we were transferred is because there is a public demand, especially on the efficiency level and effectiveness in promoting maritime safety. That's why the President Fidel Ramos exercises his authority to realign the government agency. Hence, the Coast Guard were then transferred under Department of Transportation. Now, with these placements, sir, if you try to look out on the perspective of organizational structure, the Coast Guard then, was then promoted as far as bureaucracy is concerned, from only part of the Navy, now being directly part under the department. So if we try to compare with the AP, DND, AP is under the DND, the Coast Guard now under a department, the OTR, and if we try to look further at the PNP, now it is under the DILG. So these are comparatively bureaus already, sir.
But the PNP is under not the DILG, per se, but The PNP is under the NAPOLCOM. Kaya lang under the SILG kasi ex officio chairman ng NAPOLCOM yung SILG. In his
Yes, sir.
capacity as the ex officio chairman of the NAPOLCOM, doon nagkaroon ng supervision yung SILG, yung Secretary of Interior and Local Government. But this is different. You'll be attached with the DND, attached agency kayo, and there's only one Secretary of National Defense who will exercise control and supervision over the Philippine Coast Guard. Ang problema is there are two four-star generals na kinocommand ng and both are, equipped sa yung maritime in the aspect of maritime implementation of maritime laws, and the like. So
Mr. Chairman,
This present with this organizational setup, sir, and then of course with the provision section 3 that the Coast Guard would be under DND in times of war. So I think, sir, in my opinion, the placement would only be parallel with AFP as co-chair as far as operational concern is concerned.
yeah, what I'm suggesting is let's scrap that proposed provision. Let the Philippine Coast Guard remain under the Secretary of DOTR, and let the DOTR Secretary and the Secretary of National Defense to deal with each other. Yes, Senator Gordon, you're raising your hand.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, we have to go a little bit into the history. At times, being a former Commonwealth of the United States of America. In the case of the United States and the Philippines at that time, the Coast Guard was always part of the military establishment in the U.S., and therefore it was part of the U.S. Navy. The U.S. Navy had it's just like the U.S. Marines, the even in our case, the Philippine Marines is still part of the Navy. In fact, that's something that I understand fully well. But certainly, when war starts, the Coast Guard has to assume that it will be under unified command in case of a different purpose already, because they're now fighting for national sovereignty. We're now fighting for, the Coast Guard is also doing right now, but you're fighting now an external enemy. And definitely there would have to be, and the chairman is correct, this is something that we cannot solve here. In times of peace, there's no problem. You can have a 4-star rank. But once you have a wartime condition, being the organization the way it is, the Philippine Navy would take the primary responsibility of directing the Philippine Marines, for an example, and the Philippine Coast Guard, like the Philippine Marines, would have to be under the supervision and authority of the Philippine Navy, so the unity of command can be maintained. But for so long as we are in peacetime conditions, we, I suppose, in their desire to have parity at the time, even the branches of the armed forces of the Philippines right now, they can only attain 3-star rank. It is only the chief of staff that has 4-star rank, because at times, because of our capabilities, when you match it against other armed forces, complain dyan pati namang ating military, because pag sumatapat sila sa iba, they're chief of the Navy, and yet the chief of the Navy of another country like Japan will probably be, I don't know about this now, but I'm not sure, another country would have a 4-star rank. Pero pagdating sa atin, we're a 3-star rank. So, nagiging junior officer yung ating chief of the Navy. So I suppose in times of war, the chairman is correct. Even now, to assume that situation, we can be clear on the law that the Navy will be superior in terms of war, in times of war, over the Coast Guard, and we can leave it to the two department heads to prepare the groundwork in case that happens, that there is something that they can pull out of the shelf that will immediately say, wartime rank will become, let's say, will follow Philippine the armed forces of the Philippines system. The only reason why I think when we civilianized the Coast Guard, was because for practical purposes, we can get more aid. The armed forces can get more aid, and the Coast Guard can get civilian aid. Because sometimes hindi makakapag-bigay ang ibang countries sa Coast Guard if it's a military unit. Especially if there are accusations of abuses of human rights and stuff like that, nababawasan yan eh. For that matter, the Philippine National Police can gets a different share in aid than the armed forces. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chairman. I think that's the way it's formulated. So I would follow the vision of my chairman here, in the sense that not only because you're well trained in the Philippine Military Academy and the Unity of Command, but certainly so long as we're in a civilian condition where there is no time of war, we follow the chain of command sa Coast Guard. But once we go into a war situation, they would have to follow the agreements made between the Department of Transportation Secretary and the Department of National Defense, in which case the Department of National Defense will have to be in control of every conceivable weapon that we have in our command. So I go by your suggestion.
Thank you, Senator Dick. There are two options, ano? Ito, top of mind lang ito. I-defrack natin, yung defracking, di ba?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm familiar
Temporarily, bawasan mo yung rango para lang to conform with the call of the time, so to speak. So in times of war, defrack natin yung commandant ng Philippine Coast Guard, gawin nating 3-star rank para at least he can follow orders from the Chief of Staff or the FOIC of the Philippine Navy. Another approach is maintain nyo na lang yung second line of defense kayo. Yung first line of defense is the Philippine Navy. Yung external aggression, kayo yung nasa second line, and let the Secretary of the OTR and the Secretary of National Defense deal with each other. Lateral coordination. I-delineate na lang. No? Now, in times of peace, right now, as we are situated right now, merong intrusion sa West Philippine Sea. How do you coordinate with the Philippine Navy in this regard? Anong delineation ng authority ng Philippine Coast Guard in guarding against, of course, we're not capable right now, pero you still patrol, di ba?
Yes, sir.
Nagpapatrol kayo sa within the 12 nautical mile distance, because that's ours. So how do you maintain that coordination, seamless coordination with the Philippine Navy in this regard? Wala pa tayo sa gera, ha? Girian pa lang ito. That's even an exaggerated term, yung girian. But how do you deal with it right now?
Right now, sir, the Coast Guard is under the National Task Force of the West Philippine Sea, under the NSA, chaired by NSA. So all our activities at the West Philippine Sea are properly coordinated with the Navy. In Palawan, we are coordinating with the Westcom, sir. So actually, the Westcom is the ATF West, under the ATF West, chaired by Westcom himself. So our assets are actually coordinated, and the movement of all our vessels are coordinated with Westcom.
Sa ngayon, wala tayong nakitang problema kasi magbista naman si Vice Admiral Enriquez at saka si Admiral
Yes, sir.
Laroyan, di ba?
What eight?
Wala nakitang problema kasi they can deal with each other. But that's not a permanent situation, di ba? What if lalo ngayon pabata yung sa Coast Guard, di ba?
Yes, sir. Actually, our district commander in Palawan is the one dealing with Westcom. Not
Yeah, but
necessarily
he's taking orders, yeah.
Yes, sir.
But of course, pagka top level coordination, andun yung
Lateral coordination
Lateral.
between Westcom and
Anyway,
the commandant.
let's leave it at that at the moment. Pag-aralan nyo mabuti kasi may mga situation that would call for addressing this kind of situations or problems. Now, right now, 5 yung functions nyo. Ano nga yung main functions ng Philippine Coast Guard?
Initially, sir, the primordial function is the search and rescue, maritime search and rescue, followed by maritime safety services, marine environmental protection, maritime law enforcement, and maritime security.
So, how are you faring in each of these functions right now? Kasi this is important para malaman natin kung may justification ba to amend 9993, Kasi kung pakita niyo yung shortcomings in terms of, in other words, you justify why we should enact into law yung Senate Bill 2232. Ano? Of course, there are two other bills under consideration, but ito muna yung main ano nyo. This is your legislative proposal, I understand, di ba? Nanggaling sa inyo mismo ito. So I want to simplify it kasi kung ang concern nyo lang yung to be at par with your counterparts sa armed forces, then baka pwedeng simplify na lang natin doon kasi if we're not capable naman to fully implement the law kasi malaki yung ano rin requirement in terms of budget appropriations ano. For example, yung Philippine Coast Guard Academy, you're proposing to establish a Philippine Coast Guard Academy para ito maging source ng mga officers ng Philippine Coast Guard. Ang initial requirement nyo is what, 500, 800 million ba? Pesos. And then yung maintenance, ito yung yearly appropriations that the Philippine Coast Guard Academy will be needing, something like 500 million. Is that correct? So we have to justify all this. Ano? I'm not saying that you solve it right now, but these are issues that can crop up in the course of our plenary debates. So it is important that we settle it during this committee hearing. Go ahead.
With permission from Vice Admiral Andona, sir.
For a while, Senator Gordon, are you raising your hand?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
I
you're
just have a
recognized.
couple of thoughts, again, congruous to your statement. Number one, I don't know, maybe I can ask this in the form of a question. Who has more bottoms now? The Philippine Navy or the Philippine Coast Guard? I think because the Coast Guard is growing very much so because
Please
we're even
respond.
getting ships from
Please respond to the
Coast Guard
question.
vessels from Japan, right, and Australia.
So far, sir, we don't have yet the comparable number as far as the fleet of the Navy and the Coast Guard. But we can find it out, sir.
Yes,
Well-
homework nyo yan. Anyway,
Well,
I think we
there-
can still schedule another hearing here.
We have, Mr. Chair, if I may ask.
Yes.
We have more smaller vessels
That's correct.
available compared to the Navy, which are large vessels with missiles. Ours is the biggest right now is 83 meters, but we have 297 meters coming from Japan next year. So that makes the Coast Guard more modern, if I may say it, and more available to patrol the West Philippine Sea by next year. Po, sir.
That's because our Coast Guard remains in territorial waters of the Philippines. The Coast Guard of the United States, even if it's under the Homeland Security in America during peacetime, they can operate even in the even beyond borders of the United States. They operate in the Philippines, in West Philippine Sea. Isn't that correct, sir? Addressing it to the Philippine Coast Guard.
Yes, po, sir, Mr. Chair, and that's correct, po, sir. There's only one available OPB for the Coast Guard right now. I mean the offshore patrol vessel.
Because yung Coast Guard ng Amerika, malaki talaga yan. And they have other functions and missions. That's why I think tama yung sinasabi ni Chairman Senator Lacson, Senator Ping, na within our country, ang trabaho natin is talaga yung protecting the within the 12-mile area along with the Philippine Navy, kasama yan. But especially so in our islands, no, yung mga 3 miles, 12 miles, operate on Coast Guard. And you're going to have more smaller bottoms that makes you have more, how do I say, adaptability and flexibility to react towards these local situations. No? So my point is, maybe, I don't know, the other option is to defrac now and be 3-star rank ang because already there would be some form of I wouldn't call it tension, pero baka mamaya Coast Guard lang kayo sabihin na iba. I don't want to say that, you know, because the Philippine Navy is a 3-star rank, yung head ng Philippine Navy. Tapos ang Coast Guard dati 4-star rank. Maybe it's time to think about that. I'm not saying we should do anything about it right now, but it's time to think about that because that's certainly going to go on the floor and we're going to have a question. My personal opinion is I will go to 3-star rank. Kaya lang nagiging ganyan because meron pa tayong tira ng Philippine Military Academy that went to the Coast Guard, and certainly unfair. Yung kaklase ni Admiral Ebenia right now, ni Oscar, is already 4-star, would be 4-star rank if he's chief of staff, no? But yung kaklase niya, 3 stars sa Philippine Navy. Would that be correct, Mr. Chairman?
I do not know, sir. I'm confused already.
Di ba
No,
3-star
actually,
rank?
the chief of staff now he still carries a 3-star rank because he has not been nominated yet to the
Yes.
position or to the rank of 4-star.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Pero
that's
ang
immaterial,
highest,
ano?
Senator Ping, di ba ang highest ng Philippine Navy would be 3-star? Wala naman silang 4-star eh.
Yes, sir. The flag officer in command is at par with the CG Philippine Air Force and the Philippine Army. Tatlong
So,
estrella lang sila. There's
pag
only
nagsabay,
one 4-star rank in the AFP, who is the chief of staff.
kaya tinanong ko yung number of bottoms kasi pagdating ngayon sa mga meetings, 4-star rank ang Coast Guard tapos yung 3-star rank ang Philippine Navy, medyo illusory tayo ng konti. Nagkakaroon na rin ng konting tension. Dahil, Philippine Navy, obviously, iba yun. You're starting, I'm not looking at the Coast Guard as a junior part. Each one has a role to play. Pero, would you feel that, Admiral Oscar, when you start talking about, let's say in socials, tapatan nyo ang, pareho kayong 3-star, pero kayo 4-star na, yung kaklase nyo sa Philippine Navy, 3-star eh, di ba?
I think it's accepted already, sir, that the Coast Guard is the third force in the country, next to AFP, PNP, and then the Coast Guard. So,
I understand that. Pero
so okay lang
certainly,
po, sir. Anyway, we carry the rank already, and the Coast Guard is growing in number. And probably, if I can say it, the Coast Guard right now is the most challenged agency because we are already in the forefront. You can see Coast Guard at the airport, even at EDSA, under the IAC, and all the seaports.
but Admiral
So-
Edana, di ba, it can be said also that the Philippine Navy and the Philippine Air Force is also on the front line because they're also modernizing. I understand the Philippine Air Force will be getting the jets from Sweden because ang F-16 medyo mahal eh. The Griffin, dadagdag sila ng talaga medyo high performance jets now. And the Philippine Navy will be getting submarines, di ba? Maybe not right away, but it's in the cards that we would have to have a submarine. So when you start talking about that, I'm not looking down at the Coast Guard or looking up to the Philippine Navy. I'm just looking at, amor proprio kung magkamisan comes into the fray. So maybe it's something that we should really look into. Although the Coast Guard mission right now is getting to be more myriad. Rescue at sea, yung we could be, especially now, I ask how far is the nearest forcibly occupied artificial island created by another nation to Palawan. I think it will be about 22 kilometers, right?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And who would be our frontline force there? Halimbawa, hilahin ng Chinese yung RPS Sierra Madre, that would be an ACO-4 because it's still a commissioned vessel, right?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And if they do that, we cannot send the Coast Guard there. We'll have to send the Philippine Navy there. And I hope it doesn't happen because that's the kind of thing that keeps me up at night na ang lapit ng island, 22 kilometers, tapos may vessel tayo sa Pagasa na pwede nilang hilahin. In fact, I'm suggesting we paint it eh. Pero nakita ko yung latest pictures. Nagpunta si Senator Ping and I'm glad he went to Pagasa. Siya lang ang senador at presidential candidate has been there. Pero pag tinignan nyo yung vessel natin sa Sierra Madre, wala nang bottom eh. Inalawang na eh. So pag hinila yan, asa talagang derelict, in fact, I think it demeans us. Siyempre, ang pagtatapat nyo dyan, Philippine Navy, kung hahilahin ng, ngayon, unless hilahin ng Coast Guard ng China yan, Coast Guard natin ang tatapat. Kung talagang, if we're going to do it the proper way, di ba?
Then that will Uh,
It's a kind of a
Your
situation,
Honor,
right?
if China does that, that would trigger the MDT because
An act of war.
that vessel, BRP Sierra Madre, is still a commissioned vessel of the
Correct.
Philippine Navy. It has not
That's what
been
I'm saying.
decommissioned, and it is manned by a number of Navy personnel. I think Marines, Philippine Marine personnel.
Yes.
So that would be an act of aggression and an act of war if
Correct.
China does that. And that's the reason why they resort to using water cannons, just to harass because they want to isolate our troops.
Who's doing that?
And
That's another thing. Is it the Chinese Navy or Chinese
Coast Guard.
Coast Guard or
Chinese
Chinese
Coast Guard,
militia?
actually.
Coast
Chinese
Guard.
Coast Guard.
So
They
ang
were the ones
tatapat siya sa
responsible.
kasakali, Philippine Coast Guard.
Yeah, and that brings me to another issue, no? When I went to Pagasa, very visible talaga yung Chinese Coast Guard. In fact, I felt anger than fear, more anger than fear when we were challenged. Sabi niya, this is Chinese, you're in the Chinese military zone, which we were not. Because we were en route from Puerto Princesa to Pag-asa.
That's
And
correct.
I asked the Joint Task Unit Commander in Pag-asa, a certain Lieutenant Senior Grade Celian, sabi ko sa kanya, very visible yung mga Chinese Coast Guard vessels. So how far are they? Sabi niya, they're just beyond the 3 nautical mile distance
Limit.
from Pag-asa. Well, that's well within the 12 nautical mile distance. And they were trying to encroach from time to time. Nag-a-attempt na mag-encroach. But when they challenged these vessels, umaalis naman daw. But sabi ko, baka pinapractice na kayo niyan. And baka pagising niya na umaga, under attack na yung Pag-asa. And Pagasa Island is only populated with 193 living souls, with 54 households. Ang military component natin noon, personnel, nasa mga, I think 34 or 54, military personnel. When we were there, yung inyong Coast Guard, certain Captain Velasco ba yun? Yung nandun? Tama-tama nagland doon, nag-resupply. So now, situation, what if the Chinese Coast Guard vessels would attempt to take over Pag-asa? How prepared are we to defend Pag-asa? Remember, Pag-asa is the only inhabited island,
And occupied by the Philippines.
Sorry?
Occupied by the Philippines.
Yeah, occupied. Talagang,
Effectively.
yun lang. The others are shoals, tapos classified as not really islands.
Formations yung iba.
Talaga meron tayong presence. May government tayo eh.
Correct.
Pag-asa is a barangay
Oo.
under the municipality of Kalayaan.
And as
When
you
we talk of Kalayaan,
the school.
yun lang ang nag-iisang barangay ng Kalayaan. So, ang tanong is, in the dire possibility na inattempt i-attack yung Pag-asa, how would the PCG respond to such a situation? How capable are we? And how prepared are we to at least defend, put up a decent defense of the Pag-asa Island?
In which case, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, how would the chain of command react now? Di ba?
Another issue that we have to address.
That's correct.
Please, your thoughts, gentlemen?
Yes, sir. In this case po, sir, definitely the Coast Guard, the nearest Coast Guard available vessel is based in El Nido. So it will take overnight for us to reach Kalayaan Island. And the fact that our guns are 50 caliber only. So definitely the question on how to defend the island is really not Coast Guard activity, but Philippine Navy activity po, sir. But we can support, no? If there's a need to transport our personnel based in Kalayaan, we can utilize the vessels.
As at least a deterrent, can we not at least maintain a regular patrol?
We have been doing that, Mr. Chair, under the task force Pagsasanay and under the
But
TF West Philippine Sea.
Occasional ito, hindi
Yes,
ito
sir.
regular.
Not really regular, really not
So what's the reason why we
24/7.
are not fielding a regular Coast Guard vessel patrol or patrol vessel around the Pagasa Island?
For the whole year po, sir, it's not possible because there are times that the sea condition is not
Yeah, I
favorable
know.
for small vessels. But as soon as I've said, if we get new vessels next year coming from Japan, which is 97 meters, that will have a duration of more than 30 days at sea. So that can probably regularly patrol the West Philippine Sea.
Yeah, because there are 4 Ks,
Yes, sir.
also visible, K1, K2, K3,
K3.
K4.
Yes, sir.
Beyond those Ks, Chinese vessels pa rin nakikita namin eh.
Yes, sir. Definitely, sir.
So, pathetic talaga. Anyway,
Mr. Chairman.
let's go.
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman.
Yes, Senator Gordon.
Yes, Senator Ping, I just wanted to ask our Coast Guard, kung 50 caliber ang ating Coast Guard vessel doon, ano naman ang caliber ng weapon ng Chinese Coast Guard?
CG2, Intel. You will be relieved if you cannot answer that question. That's a very basic question.
Would you say they're more superior na lang? Sabihin na lang natin they're more superior, more
Probably
destructive.
not missile.
And of course,
But there are presence also, Mr. Chair, of PLA Navy in the area. So these are corvettes equipped with missile launchers. So we really need the Navy to be available in case the Pagasa will be attacked. The presence of the Navy vessels.
you correctly stated in your remarks earlier, just about a few minutes ago, that what the Secretary of Defense of the United States Miley said. Unfortunately, this looks like rehearsals yung ginagawa sa Taiwan. Sa atin rin, rehearsal tayo di ba? They use water cannons. And sinasabi nga, I was talking with Secretary Lorenzana earlier today, and I'm saying what will happen, ang lapit-lapit lang nung pinakamalapit na artificially formed island ng China, may missiles, may boats, may lahat sa Palawan. Again, I even make a more drastic question. Supposing one day they decide padala sila ng amphibious vessels and they occupy part of Palawan, that will be a problem to us right away because we don't have the equipage or the equipment to be able to react. Would that be correct, Admiral?
That's exactly correct po, sir. No? To avert po, sir, the water cannon incident, the Coast Guard vessels will be reprovisioning the Marines assigned in Ayungin po, sir, in Sierra Madre. So hindi na po civilian vessel yung gagamitin for reprovisioning our Marine troops in Ayungin. So we'll be using the white ships already.
Meaning the Navy ships?
The Coast Guard ships po, sir. The Coast Guard ships.
Coast Guard.
Because we will use a white-to-white diplomacy.
Alam ko kasi
Hopefully,
warship. Not white,
anyway,
warship.
our white ship also have a water cannon. So pwede tayong sir, gumanti ng water cannon.
Yeah, water war.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, I'm glad that we're getting an education of sorts because we know that we have to really equip our Coast Guard and our Navy with the right. That's an act of political will. No? I would support any action to that effect, and I'm sure Senator Lacson, being schooled in the military, will know that we cannot just rely on diplomatic means, and there's got to be some bite and from fight in us. So yun lang. So these statements about rank and 4-star rank, 3-star rank, that can be prepared for. We don't have to do it here. I do not want to delay the action on the Coast Guard. I agree with you. Unfair naman yung promotion nila. We'll have to look at that, and Senator Lacson is expert on the budget here. Kung dadagdag tayo ng retirement to ensign ng CPO, there will be cost to it, no? And certainly, pag nag-retire yung 4-star ninyo, mas malaki ang pension niya. Di ba? Ang Coast Guard pension ba mas mababa sa Philippine Navy pension?
Well, that brings us to the next issue, no? Budget. I have some figures here. Yung 2020, under the 2020 GAA, ang budget ng Philippine Coast Guard, 15.2 billion. Okay. 2021, yung current year, 13.2 billion. Now you're proposing for the under the 2022 budget measure, 16.439 billion. Now, how much more? And I'd like to ask DBM, because I see Ms. Helen Holgado, DBM Valerie Sobrepeña, and the others, how much more would you need to implement this, if this measure is passed into law, enacted into law? Magkano yung additional na requirement in terms of appropriations ng Philippine Coast Guard? Lahat, hindi lang equipment, hindi lang yung increase ng troop ceiling, pati yung retirement benefits na sabi nyo nga hindi at par with your counterparts. So how much more would you need? Ano lang, estimate lang, hindi naman kailangan exact. And we'd like to hear from the DBM if we can sustain this. That's another issue that will be asked on the floor, Senator Gordon. And I'm glad that you will be there to co-sponsor and co-defend this
I'm
issue.
all ears at this time, Mr. Chairman.
So how much more would you need? In compliance with this measure, if it is passed into law.
Saan yun? Yung latest, specify.
Sino ba tinatanong?
DBM? May we hear from DBM? Yes. Kindly identify yourself.
Mr. Chair, good morning po. Felipe Roa po from DBM po.
Go ahead.
Yes po, sir. Currently po, sir, ang requirements po ng Coast Guard in terms of personnel services, yung pasahod po, around 12 million to 13 12 billion to 13 billion po. Excluding pa po yung requirements sa pension. That is only for the current strength na around 20,000 personnel. I think pag full-blown na po yung request po nila na 75,000 personnel, siguro 83 po natin yung 13 billion requirements.
So 39
Yes po, sir.
billion na. PS pa lang.
Yes po, sir. Opo. PS pa lang po yun, sir.
Excluding pension.
Yes po, sir.
So isasama natin yung pension because they want to upgrade yung pension na requirements nila. How much more?
Currently po, sir, yung pension requirements ng Coast Guard is around 1.2 billion for the I think 1,500 pensioners, around something like that. So
That is correct. Mga 1,500 yung pensioners nila.
yes po, sir. So habang tumatagal po, sir, dumadami din po yung pensioner. So ang magiging parang may exponential factor po yun, sir, pag yung pag-increase ng pension requirement po.
So what you're saying, DBM, out of yung 12 to 13 billion na PS, that's for 2021, di ba?
Yes
Under
po,
the
sir.
current year. So out of the, pero teka muna, yung GAA ng 2021 ng Coast Guard, 13.2 eh. So does it mean that the remaining balance of 1 billion, kasi sabihin natin 12 billion, yung PS, ang PS nila, 12 billion, out of the 13.2 billion appropriations ng Philippine Coast Guard. So 1.2 billion na lang yung pang MOE, pang capital outlay, and so forth and so on. Parang it doesn't, hindi nag-a-add up yata. Coast Guard, do you have your data? PS.
Mr. Chair, for the pension adjustment,
No, PS muna.
PS.
For 2021, anong PS ninyo?
Wait, Mr. Chair.
correct ito, Luis. Remember, your total budget for 2021 is only 13.2 billion pesos. So how much is for
Nagtataka ko,
PS?
sabi niya, aabot ng 35 billion eh. Narinig ko sa kanya eh. I don't think something's wrong somewhere. 13 billion lang ikanyo. I was about to say, yung nawala doon sa Farmally is 9 billion. Yung budget ng Coast Guard, 13 billion. 9 billion yung nawala sa Farmally.
How much revenue are you generating? Yung in terms of fees, mga ganon. Magkano yan?
Maliit lang po sir, around 2 million lang po.
2 million lang.
a year.
Ha?
So okay, ito yung data na nakuha namin, ano. Yung PS ninyo is 10 billion out of the 13.2 billion. So there's remaining 3.2 billion for MOE, for capital outlay, and so forth and so on. So where will this bring you? No, and then excluding pension, sabi ng DBM. So pag dinagdag yung pension, which is about 1,500, nasa mga 1.2 billion. So yung 3.2, binawasan mo pa ng 1.2, 2 billion na lang yung pang ano nyo? Pang maintain ng mga vessels ninyo.
Correct po sir, maliit po yung aming MOE.
So what's happening here? Hindi nyo dinefend yung budget nyo properly. Sa NEP, sa budget call. Well, in 2022, merong improvement kasi ang proposed budget nyo is 16.439 billion. So hindi naman kayo nag-increase ng personnel from 20, naging 22,000 kayo ngayon, di ba?
There was an increase po sir ng 4,000.
4,000. So 23,000 na kayo.
Well, at the end of the year po sir.
Yeah, end of the year. How much sa pension? Saka retirement?
Pension adjustment requires 278 million po sir. And I want to correct our collection only 22 million every year.
22 million lang.
Our collections on peace and
And
revenue.
you cannot use this outright, di ba? You have to
We are not allowed.
Yeah.
This goes to the
to
treasury.
treasury and
Yes.
then you request for funding.
Opo sir.
Nakakakuha naman kayo in return.
Unfortunately, we are not getting
It becomes part of the
treasury sir.
treasury.
Yes.
Hindi man lang binabalik sa Coast Guard yung portion.
Unlike the PPA po sir, we were not getting
Yeah.
anything.
Sinama nyo ba sa proposed measure yan na yung
Yes,
at least yung share nyo sa revenue collection na man-generate ninyo?
Although it is small sir, sinama po namin because this can be utilized to
Yeah,
improve our
of course.
substations.
Ang anak ng tipak. Wala tayong pag-uusapan pala dito. So,
Maliit po
Oo.
talaga sir. We include also the special account for the Coast Guard.
Yeah,
no?
special account.
Yes sir.
DBM, kindly help us out.
Even if they get the 22 million, that's only a spit in the ocean.
That's good for only one substation po sir.
Correct.
Which you do not get.
Of course yes, we are not getting po sir.
DBM, please. Can we sustain the passage of this measure? We want to hear, honestly, DBM. DBM. Paki-assist kami rito. Ang basic question is, can we sustain the implementation of this proposed measure if it is passed into law?
Yes, special account.
Permission to be recognized, Your Honor.
Yes, please
This is
kindly
Lorini Pereda.
identify yourself muna and your
This is
position.
Lorini Pereda from the Department of Budget and Management, sir.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, sir. Regarding the proposal of the special account in the general fund for the the Philippine Coast Guard, in which receivables from local or foreign entities shall be credited, including proceeds or excess of grants, fees, or charges generated in regular conduct of service, and that the PCG may be used the same for the capability enhancement. The creation or establishment of the said SAGF, to which the agency income collections shall directly accrue and to be retained by the PCG to support its capability enhancement is not in accordance with the one fund policy in government budgeting and not consistent with Section 4 or the general provisions of Republic Act number 11465, even 11518 of the FY 2021 GAA, as well as Section 44, Chapter 5, Book 6 of EO 292, Series of 1987, and Section 65 of Presidential Decree number 1445. These laws provide that all fees, charges, assessments, and other receipts or revenues collected by departments, bureaus, offices, and instrumentalities of the national government, including constitutional offices enjoying fiscal autonomy in the exercise of their mandated function, shall be deposited with the National Treasury as income of the general fund. The said income shall form part of the revenue and financing sources of the national government for its expenditures, subject to the budget evaluation and review process, and in turn shall be made as basis for the General Appropriations Bill. So that's the position of the DBM as regards the establishment of special accounts in the general fund, Your Honor.
Thank you. But my question is, if this proposed measure is enacted into law, increasing the troop ceiling, tapos plus equipment, can we sustain it? Can the budget sustain even the creation of a Philippine Coast Guard Academy that requires funding, additional funding? Yun po yung aking tanong, DBM.
It would have a substantial impact on the budgetary requirement, Your Honor. So we really need to look into the impact of it in the fiscal position of the government. And since it would mean continuous support, and we don't want another unfunded law because of this, Your Honor.
In other words, offhand, you're opposing the this piece of legislation. More or less, that's what I'm impressed with your answer right now.
Your Honor, we
Can you
are
submit
just...
your position paper na
Yes,
lang,
sir.
ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah,
Your
sige.
Honor. We will
Pero
submit the
paki-compute
detailed position.
paki-compute lang kasi alam nyo, meron tayong problema talaga sa West Philippine Sea, and we also need to equip Coast Guard. So pag-aralan nyo lang mabuti yung impact at saka kung ano yung pwede nating maidagdag sa kanilang budgetary requirements. Pwede namang himayin pa ng konti itong bill to conform with the requirement of DBM also. So, thank you.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you po.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Mr. Chair, the expense requirement of the new bill can be adjusted on several years. Hindi naman siya one release only. No?
multi-year yung
Multi-year
requirement.
po, sir. Yung 72.
So, can you submit to us yung on a per year basis yung how do we go?
Initially, sir, with the Congress consultation, we can acquire 4,000 increase every year because that's
Personnel.
personnel.
4,000 per.
Yes, sir.
So, isama nyo na doon yung pension requirements,
Yes, sir.
retirement.
Okay.
Then, of course, yung modernizing kasi kasama sa bill, di ba?
Opo, sir.
Mag-upgrade tayo ng
Yes, Mr. Chair.
military capability or capability. Sama nyo lahat, ha? We'll call for another hearing because apparently we're not ready with the data at this point in time. So even from the other agencies. Yung Maritime Group, you're present, ano yung working relationship nyo with the Philippine Coast Guard and the Philippine Navy? Kasi kailangan define natin yung delineation of responsibilities, tapos yung inyong duties, functions and duties. Maritime Group, kindly identify yourself.
Sir, Your Honor, sir, Police Brigadier General Harold Tuson, sir, of newly installed Director of Maritime, sir. Sir, our relationship with the Philippine Coast Guard and even the Philippine Navy is we have the
West Philippines, sir, NTF.
the NTF West Philippine Sea. We coordinate all our efforts, particularly on the exercise of our mandate in the West Philippine Sea, and it's through the task force, sir, that we coordinate all our efforts. Yun yung relationship namin with the Philippine Coast Guard and the Philippine Navy.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. Ito, another issue, no, before we suspend the hearing.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, sir.
Yes, you're recognized.
Sir, can I just refer back to your previous question pertaining to the Coast Guard functions, just to help you justify our pursuing this amendment, sir?
Go ahead.
Way back in 2017, sir, we were able to defend at DBM the submitted TUE of 2017, which is attuned with the new Coast Guard Law RI 9993. The question you have raised earlier, sir, is the same question raised by all the experts from DBM. So initially, the process at DBM, sir, once we propose creations of offices and positions, we pass to under the scrutiny of the office position classification group from DBM, and these are composed of all the experts. So the question is, how can we justify the Coast Guard's modernization as well as expansion? So we refer back to our law source, the Republic Act 993, which has 18 powers and functions. And this is further expanded in our IRR, which has 52 powers and functions. But if you try to categorize it, sir, it has 3 core functions, which are maritime safety, marine environmental protection, and maritime security. Now, when we categorize this one, sir, we already consider this as our core functions. Now, in our experience, as just to better illustrate on how we serve the country based on these core functions in relations with our operating units, sir, in the area. Sa Coast Guard kasi with this setup, sir, we have the commandant who is the chief of the bureau that provides strategic direction of the organization, and directly supporting him are these functional commanders. These are the one providing doctrines, providing training for the specific functional area. Pag sinabi nating maritime safety function, sir, these are functional commands that provide and govern those domestic vessels transiting across the archipelago to be safe and secure from its port of origin going to its ports of destination. Ang Maritime Safety Command is providing training and qualifying our vessel safety enforcers. And at the same time, sir, we have this port state control inspections, which are regional level, specifically the Tokyo MOU, wherein we provide inspection to foreign vessels calling the ports in the country. So if you try to look at it, sir, we are practically controlling the movement of domestic vessels as well as fishing foreign vessels in the country. Secondly, marine environmental protection. These are one of the functions of the Coast Guard long before it started its establishment under PD 602. And now we focus more on environmental protection, not as just oil responder as its original creation, but as well as on its proactive measure in promoting the cleaner seas, wherein we are continuously providing, monitoring the pollution sources of pollution, not from upland, and of course, pollutions from the seas. So that's why we are creating environmental warriors and inspectors to regularly monitor and prevent polluters to the sea. And thirdly, sir, we have this maritime security and law enforcement, wherein we provided and enforced maritime security law, which is in fact the implementation of the airspace code, which is the ship port facility code, sir, of the country. In our experience, as far as maritime security and law enforcement, apart from the West Philippine Sea issue, we also participated, if you may recall, the Marawi siege. The Coast Guard provided support to the AEP in its effort to neutralize the Mauta group, wherein there's a large Marawi lake. In fact, we consider it as inland sea. The Coast Guard provided to deny the supply line of this Mauta group in transporting their logistics to support their firepower against the AEP. That 5-month-long siege, in fact, Coast Guard, we believe, has contributed in denying the supply line. Secondly, as far as fighting terrorism, as well as kidnapping and piracy at sea, if you may recall, sir, in 2016, there was a sudden spike of piracy and armed robbery at sea, specifically in Sulu Sea, when in fact foreign vessels transiting Cebu Passage, which is very crucial in the country. In our data, sir, that Cebu Passage is very important for international shipping lane because there are large, very large vessels coming from Australia, China, Japan, and other countries that regularly passes this Sulu Passage. That is why the Coast Guard then created and established the Coast Guard support base in order to make an outright response in the event that there will be seajacking at sea. And secondly, sir, we also support the AEP and PNP as far as our interoperability concept, especially jointly addressing our fight against terrorism. On the effort of the Coast Guard, we also provide floating assets to address these threats at sea, especially kidnapping in West Philippines, in Western Mindanao. And in my experience as a former district commander, we happen to identify this kidnapping pattern, and we jointly operate with the AEP and PNP, sir, to quell these threats at sea and terrorism. Thank you very much, sir.
Under 9993, di ba, ang mandate nyo lang is to assist, di ba? That's why you are trying to insert under, I think, section 3, paragraph K. I don't know kung yung specific provision. In-insert nyo yung and implement. So on your own, you can implement.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, but right now, you're implementing actually laws against terrorism and other criminal offenses.
Actually, if you try to look at the functions of the Coast Guard, sir, it can already directly enforce and implement the law, sir.
Eh, bakit pinapa-amend nyo pa to insert the phrase and implement instead of just merely assisting?
Let me refer to our LLA, sir,
Yeah.
if a specific.
Kasi there's a proposed amendment sa isang section na you are proposing to insert the phrase and implement. So I'm just wondering kung under 9993, if you're already implementing.
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir, Mr. Chair. In the start, when we started with this proposed revision, sir, with the House of Representatives, it covers only, the amendment should only cover the organization and the administration part of RA 9993, because that is where all the gaps that we have observed existed. However, sir, during the time that it was with the TWG, under study of the TWG under the Committee on Transportation, the author, due to the recommendation of the NSA, I believe, Mr. Chair, requested that we already include even the functions of the PCG in the amendment and make the amendment instead into a revision of RA 9993. because with the current proposal of the Coast Guard, it will leave only around 4 provisions standing in RA 9993 po. So we agreed to that, and considering that we have had problems, Mr. Chair, when we were implementing, so we just decided to make that part clearer by putting the word implement, Mr. Chair.
Yun, ano? Tama yon, Section 3, Paragraph K, ano? Kaya gusto namin i-clarify bakit kailangan i-insert yung phrase na and-implement. Kasi nga, wala doon sa 9993. Was that an oversight or... But you're already implementing as it is, di ba?
Yes, Mr. Chair, because of
So it's required to assist in the enforcement and maintenance of maritime security, prevention or suppression of terrorism, and so forth and so on. Doon sa Section 3K ninyo, sa Senate Bill 2322, sinabi doon to assist in and implement. In-insert nyo yung, just to clarify.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Marami pa tayong hindi na-discuss. Yung sa pay scale, salary. Maybe Senator Gordon, would you like to...
Yes, pahabol lang, Chairman, Chairman Ping. Yung given the strictures of the budget right now, nangingi ang Coast Guard ng Coast Guard Academy. While that is ideal, at the moment, baka mahirapan tayo. Ang hinihingi nyo atang budget doon, 500 million, correct? Admiral?
Yung one time, I think it's 800 million. And then yearly, 500 million just to maintain.
Hindi ba pwedeng sa Maritime Academy muna natin ilagay sa San Antonio, Zambales?
PMMA, Philippine Merchant Marine Academy.
Philippine Merchant Marine Academy.
Ang main source ng officers at saka enlisted personnel, ay not enlisted personnel, yung non-officer rank, PMMA?
No, sir. For the officers only, sir.
For the officers.
We have so many sources of officers, Mr. Chair. Initially, we have our own Coast Guard officer course under our school, wherein we trained officers for 8 months. Those were 4-year course graduate and civil service eligibles.
Ano bang strength ng officer rank ninyo ngayon? Present strength?
2,000.
2,000 plus. And how many
2,000 plus.
do you need to every year? Sa officers lang, yung new ensigns. 10%, so that's 200.
200.
So parang you need to graduate if ever we will accede to the proposal na magkaroon ng Philippine Coast Guard Academy. Ang i-graduate lang yearly is 200 as per your requirement.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you, Senator Dick.
I was thinking kasi baka pwede na muna sa Merchant Marine Academy. Pero meron pala silang officer school candidate school siguro, officer candidate school. But, habang wala pa yung Merchant Marine, habang wala pa yung Military Academy, perhaps you can just add additional courses there or a separate building for the 200 a year that they're going to occupy. Because maganda yung campus dun that's the former U.S. Naval Communications Center in San Antonio, Zambales.
Top 1,500 yung... I'm sorry. So 200, yung attrition ninyo, retirement and separation, ano yan per year? Anong number niyan? On the average lang.
Right now po, sir, medyo mababa pa siya. 200. 200.
So it's a young Coast Guard.
100 plus only, sir, because these are the officers and men who came from the Navy.
Yes.
So we only started recruiting in the year 2000. So we basically have a very young population. Almost 60% of our population are not more than 5 years in the service because of the mass recruitment that we did. So it will take another 5 years po, sir, before we can get...
And the 200, the number 200 sa recruitment would correspond to the requirement na mag-increase yung
Yes, sir.
troop ceiling.
Yes, sir. And we also have other sources of officers.
Yeah.
We have scholars from PMMA, and we also have scholars from the U.S. Coast Guard. So that's where we get our officers.
And you've got a good officer corps, huh? And the enlisted men are very disciplined and very alert and snappy. But kung papasok natin yan, baka mahirapan tayo sa budget kasi. That's what I worry about. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Dick. May mga lateral entrance ba?
We are still open for lateral entry po, sir.
Anong average number ng from the armed forces, from the PNP? Ito, proposal nito, di ba? Tumanggap kayo ng sa lateral entry
Admiral Coy may can
of
answer.
active members of the other uniform services.
Sir, if I may, sir.
Yes.
Just to give a background how we were able to pass our lateral entry policy as approved by the Secretary, it is because the question being posed by DBM during our deliberation of TU 2017, of course, the question raised directly by Secretary Joknoden when he asked, how are you going to maintain the pyramidal structure of your organization based on your Section 7 and 8, wherein the defined percent distribution by rank of your officer as well as the ratio of 1 officer is to 7. So with that question, sir, we basically, and he asked that what is the quota per year for those new recruits or new entries? Are they all new recruits or are they all taken from other sources? So just to satisfy the provisions of the law, sir, those lowest rank for the officers and non-officers, this would be the quota for recruitment. And others would be a quota or for lateral entry coming from the AP or PNP, which the Coast Guard feels that they're based on their experience and specialization that could suit the PCG organization.
Si may law enforcement background din.
Yes, sir.
Now, there's a proposal here to, yung pag-appoint ng ensign, presidente pa mag-a-appoint. That's
No
understandable
longer, sir.
sa AFP kasi talagang pag na-commission officer ka, presidente yung nagko-commission, di ba?
Yes.
Pero sa Coast Guard, being a civilian entity, do we still need the president to appoint an ensign? Probably kung yung captain up, pwede.
There's already a provisions in the Coast Guard, in the Coast Guard, sir, that the Secretary will approve the appointment of the rank captain and below.
And it's proposed under 2232? 2322? Under 9993, who
9993.
appoints?
Captain and below, sir, is the Secretary, sir.
Secretary.
And flag rank, Commodore and above, is the President, sir.
Yung promotion, presidente pa?
From captain to for flag ranks po, sir.
Yeah.
Promotion of flag ranks.
Sa PNP, from at the time, inspector to superintendent, chief PNP lang yung nagpo-promote. Pagdating mo ng ranggong senior superintendent or full colonel now, presidente.
Yes, sir.
So, do you follow the same pattern, same practice?
Sir, if I may, sir, I think the LA has a better stance on that proposal, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chair. We have, under RA 9993, it was made that only those promoted to captain and to Commodore will be submitted to the President for approval. From ensign to captain, Mr. Chair, it will be the Secretary, but we have reverted back to what we have been practicing until 2010, Mr. Chair. So we have, under this revision of RA 9993, Mr. Chair, we have again returned the commissionship of the ensign to the Office of the President for the
Why?
security of their tenure, since we are not under the civil service, Mr. Chair. So,
Yeah, but you're not also military personnel, di ba?
but we still maintain, Mr. Chair, this structure of and organization of the military.
Anyway, this requires further study siguro. homework kayo, sabi nyo, we'll call for another hearing tentatively on Monday, same time. Kung walang conflict to sa Senator Dick, wala bang conflict sa hindi babangga sa Blue Ribbon hearing natin kung Monday 10 a.m.?
Hindi. 16
Okay.
tayo. 16 tayo.
So we'll suspend this hearing until Monday, that's December 14. 14 ba yan? December 13.
13.
Okay. So we'll see each other again. And kindly attend to the hanging questions
Yes, Mr.
and how we can still parang streamline pa natin itong measure
Nice.
na kinoconsider natin. Yung sa auxiliary, wala tayong problema. The other bill, yung Coast Guard Academy, as proposed by Senator Aimee, baka may konti tayong problema doon. But we will, we'll focus our discussion on 2322. Pero subukan nating streamline and we need submissions from you. Tingnan natin how we can improve. So we can facilitate the passage. Alam mo, nakakaawa rin yung mga Coast Guard personnel. Napag-iwan na ng panahon.
Yeah.
Pati sa pension, sa retirement. No? And I'm sure Senator Dick will agree with me on this. Yung our hearts go out to you.
Yes, sir.
In this regard. Kasi
Yes,
pareho rin ang serbisyo eh.
Correct, sir.
Yung risk of life, pareho rin.
Pareho rin
Yung
marunong.
serbisyo, parang pareho rin halos, no? Ba't naiwanan kayo doon sa mga benefits?
Between
Anyway,
us girls, actually, parehong military talaga yun.
Yes, actually, military yung mindset eh.
Oo,
Di ba?
dapat eh. That's why I'm saying,
Military
Mr. Chairman, baka tuloy natin sa academy yung iba, pwede nang ilipat, i-integrate na lang doon sa Coast Guard pag-graduate sa academy. Kaya gusto ko maayos yung pension nila, pareho rin eh. Pero for purposes of international acceptance, which is really hypocritical because the US Coast Guard is military.
Yeah.
Sa atin, talaga, ginagamit na natin for pragmatic purposes to get more aid, if I'm not mistaken.
Pag binalik natin sa military yung Coast Guard, balik sa 1-star rank yung commandant. Kasi it's only a major unit under the Philippine Navy or at most 2 stars, di ba? So, pagka yung isang bagay na ibigay mo na at binawi mo, sama ng loob yan. Thank you. So we'll see each other again on Monday at 10 a.m. Sige. Good luck to you and
Thank you po,
do
sir.
your homework, do your math para ma-convince kami kasi we have to convince our colleagues in plenary. Thank you very much. So see you again.
Your Honor,
Thank you po, sir,
Your
Mr.
Honor.
Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Mr.
Thank you po, Senator Gordon.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you,
Chair.
gentlemen.
Thank you, sir. Senator Gordon.
The PCGA. Your Honor, I just want to take this opportunity first to thank Honorable Senator Gordon for the Senate Bill number 2265, Your Honor, which is very important to the PCGA and for recognizing the role of the PCGA in nation building and in providing a safe, clean, and secure marine environment for the entire Filipino people. In this regard, Your Honor, may we request that we be given time to submit our position paper, so that we can make some comments and recommendations to further the bill, Your Honor. May we request for at least 10 days from today to submit our position paper to this honorable committee, Your Honor?
Yes. You can please submit your position paper.
Mr.
Thank you
Chairman,
very much, sir.
they submit their position paper before Monday. If we want to get this passed, we only have 3 days, I think, next week for our before we adjourn, and then only a few days in January when we get back, di ba?
We will do that, Your Honor. Then,
Hindi nakahabol this term yan.
yes, sir. We will do that, Your Honors. May we be given until Friday at the latest to submit our position paper.
Just submit it because I think we're almost ready. We'll fine-tune the bill dito sa Coast Guard Auxiliary. Ihahabol natin yung Philippine Coast Guard kung pwede because ang problema doon mainly budgetary, di ba?
Yes. Thank you very much, Your Honors.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Marvin.
By the way, it's
So,
also Senator Lacson who's supportive of
Mr.
the
this hearing is
advisory, so make sure you give the proper consideration to Senator Lacson.
Will do,
You know,
Your Honors.
Attorney, alam nyo si Senator Gordon, he won't be called Mr. Passion for nothing. So,
Yes, sir.
thank you very much. This
Yes, sir.
hearing is suspended.